What's up, guys? Welcome back for another solo mining. This is episode 11. We're going to be going over the retriever today. I'm running a pretty simple bit for this and doing just normal, like lazy high sec mining. I am getting I'm getting around 10 million an hour, which is really good. Now, I've been branching out and doing a lot more in low sec and null sec with mining since we've gotten Omega, just to kind of keep everything kind of moving as far as the subscription goes. But a lot of the times when I'm just kind of like not really feeling it, the retriever has done really well with just doing some like high sec mining, which is what I'm doing right now. I do make about 10 million, like I said, an hour with a dense feldspar. Try to go after dense feldspar the best I can. I think for the majority of this video, I'm going to kind of take you guys out with the retriever into nullsec and kind of show you why you wouldn't want to necessarily do sustainable mining out there. A lot of it has to do with just, dealing with the rats and things like that. All right, we're out in null, and we're going to just kind of hang out and mine in the small anomaly. There's usually not very much ore here, and you're basically picking between Arknor and Bistot, whichever one has higher market value and how fast you plan on exporting it, or if you plan on using it, what your mining might be, depending on what you need it for. The biggest consideration when using like a retriever or something in nullsec is the fact that the rats are going to cause you a lot of problems. So you'd preferably want to run like medium drones, but it's not really possible in retriever. And so what we want to do is we're running Tech 2 lights, and those will be fine generally for us to take down some of the lighter stuff. But whenever a battleship comes on field, you're probably going to have to just go to another place to mine, because you just don't have the tank to sustain through the damage to kill everything. That's one of the big, downfalls. A lot of you might be thinking like, well, you can just kind of upgrade to the Mackinac and do that, but the Mackinac doesn't even really have a whole lot of tank either. But if you're going to do any sort of like cheap option, I think for nullsec mining solo, the Procure. And then if you want to use a skiff as an upgrade to that, is your best case. The skiff and the Procure, for the most part, can kind of sustain through battleship damage from the rats and kill things and kind of keep mining. You also have to keep an eye out for rat capital ships, so rat titans, rat dreads, which seemingly have a lot more of a spawn rate these days. And it's one of those things that, like, even a skiff has a relatively really long warp time, align time and stuff like that. And it used to be a lot better, but even a skiff, if you see a dread, like a rat dread, drop on grid, or rat carrier, even if you immediately warp to your safe location, you still you still take a couple of hits from that. So keep that in mind. Always kind of keeping a lookout. That's why I like having a PvP tab that kind of shows all that stuff, so that I don't get surprised, because you will have very little time to get off grid if that's the case. But for the most part, I mean, like, mining is not necessarily like the most entertaining thing in the world, and this is kind of what it would look like. I still try to orbit these rocks, so I'm still moving a little bit, even though if I had to warp off, depending on my location around the rock, I might have to do a whole stop at 180 to kind of get going. But I think you definitely want to be moving if you're orbiting and trying to kill rats, because if you're sitting still, you're just going to take a lot more damage from that. Getting out here and just filling up on Bistot is pretty decent. Obviously, it's much higher ISK per hour than like doing high sec mining or something like that, but then you have to kind of take into account the amount of times that you have to come off grid because of players in local, or the amount of times you come off grid because of rats that you can't handle. And then also you have to kind of take into account sorting or offloading that ore, if you're not using it for manufacturing, into account as well. That's why, a reason I kind of like, covered what I was doing in with Veldspar, within Veldspar with the retriever, is like the best use case for this ship, in my opinion. I mean, getting out there and just mining Veldspar and doing about 10 million an hour is pretty decent. And it's possible to do nullsec, but like right now, you might get lucky. We might get lucky and be able to like hang out here and fill up completely without any sort of rat issues. But it's always an impending concern when it comes to this kind of stuff. And even if you're in like other ships as well, you could be in, a but even if you're in like a fleet where everybody's running hulks and you've got like, you know, a lot of drone coverage, there's, it's still very inconvenient when when 3 battleship, rats come in and you have to kind of like, take your focus off of local a little bit and take your focus off what you're mining, because you have to take these guys off grid. So it's entirely possible, but probably not the most efficient. But one of the big reasons I wanted to kind of cover the Retriever too is I had a lot of people talking about the Retriever and Mackinac kind of variants of the mining ships, and I know a lot of you haven't seen me really use them, and a lot of it has to do with just, the tank, really. I mean, if they were a little bit more tankier, I think that the larger mining hold would be a great benefit to what I normally do. But it's just when a Procure or a Skip can kind of like, tank through rats and take stuff down and not have to necessarily come off grid all the time, even with its smaller mining hold, it just makes it a little bit more like the day-to-day real world kind of use of the ship is just a lot more sustainable than necessarily having better on paper numbers as far as the mining hold goes and everything. And plus you can just do a lot better tank on those ships as well. It has a lot more room to put on your shield modules and things like that, and do a lot better with drones and whatnot. But I figure you guys wanted to see a little bit of mining gameplay. I know we haven't really done a whole lot as far as just kind of experimental stuff. In the last few episodes, it's really been kind of like mainly focusing on just getting Omega, and at this point it's about just like keeping Omega, and a lot of it has us just kind of pushing the envelope a lot and making sure that we're doing things that are entertaining and fun without getting too much into the weeds or too much burnout from just maintaining Omega. And that's why I try to vary it up, do some null sec mining, do some low sec, and then when I feel particularly lazy, I'll just go do high sec. Her next goal is, before we actually push into like Exhumers, I think her next goal is to do like the expeditionary frigates. I want to try to do Prospect and Endurance and do some wormhole stuff with that. And I think that when we're in that kind of realm, when we're kind of doing the whole expeditionary frigate thing, we can work on the Exhumer stuff, and then we'll kind of revisit everything we're doing with barges, with Exhumers, and you should kind of just scale up to that point. And then beyond that, I'm not sure. Might go into more like gas huffing, or maybe do some ice mining in some unfavorable areas. It really just kind of depends. But obviously, like if I wasn't recording this video, then I'd have like rats on top of me almost immediately after getting on grid. But now that I'm like trying to get out here and show you guys kind of like what the toughness is for the Retriever, they're not going to spawn at all, which is unfortunate. But I figure you can kind of see the we've already mined about 59. Oh, there we go. There's some rats. So what we're going to do is I am going to just kind of like keep orbiting, and we're just going to like do our normal thing, and you can kind of just watch the shield and everything and kind of see how the interaction here goes. We'll kind of move that out of the way. You can see the rats. And then really that's what you're going to want to do, is you're going to want to kind of like focus down on the bigger stuff. The frigate's fine. The light drones are going to take the frigate down really, really fast. And really the only thing the frigate's doing to us right now is just kind of warp disrupting us. Which, we had a lot of player activity in and around this system we had to worry about. We'd probably take it down first, but I'm just kind of like wanting to get these other dudes down. As you can see, we're not even through shields yet, and it just takes longer, right? Once we get through the shields on the enforcers, they go down pretty quick. It's just, that's kind of, we want to try to get the all of them down before we're actually out of shield hit points. That's kind of the goal. I'm actually kind of glad that these guys spawned, so we could actually kind of show you the damage taken. And the other thing you do is, like, we're in Greece space in null, so you could, instead of using a Multispectrum shield hardener 2, you could use like a kinetic shield hardener 2 to get a little bit more tank against their damage type. But I figured for the course of this video, I just kind of kept everything pretty generic. So we're at about 45 shield. The damage is going to drop off a lot too that we're taking once we get this ship down. And then we're going to have to immediately start working on the next one. And this is where I kind of talked about a lot about people. It's like, it doesn't really matter if you have a really big mining hold if you're not able to stay on grid long enough to fill it up, which is why I kind of end up working with gifts and procurers. We're going to take this frigate down real quick, just to get one other ship off the grid and see if we can get some field recharge kind of going, because I think the attack rate for the Enforcer is a lot lower. We're about 32. We're balancing out at around 31, 32 shield. So I'm hoping we get this guy down. We'll be able to, and we're almost going to lose. And you know, we could pull that guy in, but we're not. He almost died, but he's starting to get some shield back. He won't get his armor back unless we repair him. But as you can see here, it's a very fine line between, actually, you have to really pay attention and really about, you know, taking guys down in a certain order. You can have a bad day. And obviously you could have just kind of warped off, but then it's like, you gotta go back out and start mining again. So, and if you don't kill them, they're just gonna keep following you around, regardless of what anomaly you're at. So, at this point, we're just kind of waiting. I mean, it should be fine. We should be able to get him down before we run out of shields. We're going as fast as we can go. If we were not moving at all, that would be an issue, because we would take a lot more damage if we weren't moving. So always try to orbit, or always try to move towards something. That's super important in almost any situation. I'm just curious about where we're going to be sitting as far as shield hit points by the time we get him down. You could run faction drones too to kind of help out with, you know, having the higher damage and get things down quicker, but that just increases your cost. So a lot of what we're trying to do is kind of stay in the Tech 2 range for this. So if you're living in a really well controlled area of Null, and there are already people around in your corporation that are like kind of doing the PvP thing and are already ratting the system, you could also just kind of go out and mine with your retriever, being at a low budget end. And if you have issues with rats, you just call in somebody to take care of them, and you just have to worry about kind of sustaining the damage in the meantime. You don't have to necessarily take them down yourself. There's a lot of ways that you can mine the higher value stuff without actually committing to really expensive ships or a lot of drone field training times or things like that. It's just, it all comes kind of down to the community. All right, 15% shield. He should take a couple more hits. As you can see, that's not great. Not great at all. And then now what you have to worry about too is, while your shield is recharging, you gotta hope that more rats don't pop in, or another player doesn't come in, or whatever. You know, you're at the mercy now of this recharge. But I think that's a really good illustration of kind of like what goes on with the retriever in nullsec, and why it's not particularly the best idea, but it is possible. If you have a community behind you, and then obviously you can get away with, you know, a lot more, because you can have people like to help you out with the rats and things like that. But I figured that's a good scope of information for this episode, and I appreciate you guys for watching. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.